right, welcome. Sorry to have asked you to stay. I know that everybody wants to have lunch. I am going to try and be brief. It's going to be a challenge for me because normally when I start talking, I never stop. And in fact, I'm already starting to go off topic because I have a little thing to say about privacy on the blockchain and Tornado Cash. So regulation, especially from, about MiCA or the AMLD or transfer of funds or even the GDPR, they don't necessarily have a problem with privacy. You know what they have a problem with? Anonymity. And all the different kind of privacy-preserving protocols are also anonymous. Now, one thing that we have been working at Dusk is basically to have privacy-preserving transaction on the layer 1, but removing the anonymity by proving, for instance, that the originator, or the origin, I'm never quite sure if an English speaker can correct me here, but I will go with originator. The originator of a transaction is known, is encrypted, and there is, for instance, an implementation of some cryptographic marvel, like zero-knowledge technology, for instance, that proves that the originator of the transaction is, in fact, who it says it is. If you have that, then you don't have Tornado Cash problems, because there is actually just losing tracks of who is the originator of a transaction and not having that certainty. Now that we got that out of the way, sorry, I really needed to address that before starting, because I devolved 7 years of my life to implementing Dusk. But today I'm not going to bore you too much with privacy, just a little bit. I am going to bore you with tokenization. So tokenization is the future of the financial markets. Larry Fink said that, the CEO of BlackRock, and I agree. And I think that tokenization is definitely the key to move from, and today I will make a case for it, a platform-based financial market infrastructure to a protocol-based financial market infrastructure. I will tell you what the difference between these two are. I will tell you what kind of problems this solved. But before then, is this thing working? Yes. So my name is Emanuele Francioni. I am the CEO and founder of Dusk. I have been in the blockchain space since forever, so 2015, I guess. And since 2017, I have been working on Dusk. I've been working on a decentralized financial market infrastructure. So a financial market infrastructure that can, in fact, just evolve from a platform-based approach to a protocol-based approach. Now, the interesting thing about talking about assets, talking about tokenization, for instance. So, is there anybody here that knows what tokenization is? I guess everybody does, but let's see a little bit of show of hand. Tokenization. Do you know what it is? A little bit, okay, that's cool. Does everybody here knows what is the difference between tokenization and digitization? That guy over there. Thank you. Now, what is the difference between digitization, tokenization, and native issuance? Finally, nobody. OK, cool. I can talk about something new today. No, you don't count. You are part of my team. I know. I know you. So when we are talking about digitization, we are talking about a representation of a digital representation of something, an asset. I am going to speak primarily about securities here, because it is my primary interest, but it applies to a lot of different things. In the realm of security, digitization pertains to the change of medium of a paper trade security. Very simple. Or a paper certificate. Nothing new. It is there since the end of the 80s. It is one of the biggest revolutions from the digital age, from the internet, and so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing is that since the advent of blockchain, we went from digitization to tokenization. So what is tokenization? Well, tokenization is a digitization that creates a synthetic asset where there is an underlying asset in the physical world or in another digital realm, so to speak, and it adds to this asset certain particular functionalities, functionalities that are very important. One of these functionalities, fractionalization, the capability basically of fractionalizing an asset. Another is to attach behavior to it. So for instance, to add smart contracts. Smart contracts are nothing else than behaviors in the form of a protocol that are attached to an asset. Now, the interesting thing is the fact that still, when we are talking about tokenization, we are talking about several different challenges, because we are talking about synthetic assets still, because there needs to be an underlying asset somewhere, right? And the reconciliation between the underlying asset and the token form is where a little bit of the inefficiencies trickle down from the old digitized financial market infrastructure to a tokenized infrastructure. And then we have native issuance. Now, native issuance, according to me, is basically the promised land of tokenization. Is where an asset doesn't need an underlying asset. The asset is immaterial and can live directly on the ledger. Now, if you remove, actually, the reconciliation system from native issuance, there is where basically the magic happens. Why? Because you do not have uncertainties that normally are expressed in the synthetic asset. Like, for instance, if you own a synthetic asset, do you still vote? Or is the custodian that has the asset that votes for you? I know that ETF providers, for instance, have an answer to that, and it's not really an answer that they like, because most of the time they have to do the voting on behalf of the owner. Why? Because tokenization is essentially a representation of a share of ownership of a certain underlying asset. Now, native issuance goes beyond that. Natively issuing securities on something that, in fact, has the same regulatory power to provide different kind of, to go beyond reconciliation, then that is where all the different inefficiencies, all the many inefficiencies that I'm going to talk to you about, hopefully very briefly, are solved. So, there. So this is the platform-based financial infrastructure as it is today. I'm not going to get into the merit of every single boxes here. There are many boxes. That's basically what we need to see. What I have been adding to this, which, by the way, is a very interesting and comprehensive description of a financial market infrastructure from the seminal work of Giovannini, by the way, which I am going to talk about in a second. You have on top, you have there are the three different layers of an infrastructure there. There is pre-trades, post-trades, clearance and settlement. What happens on the top happens at time t. What happens at the bottom happens at time t plus x. In Europe, this x is established to be 2. T plus 2, which normally means time plus 2 days. As you can see here, on the platform-based financial infrastructure, then you have different kind of actors, different kind of institutions, all of which are encapsulating operations, encapsulating different kind of functions that pertain to a part of the different infrastructure. Now, this is the platform-based approach. You have a vertical platform that exposes certain particular functionalities, and how these functionalities are in fact implemented, or the steps, are basically left to the back end of that particular institution. Now, it is not new that this kind of configuration, this kind of infrastructure is extremely inefficient. I'm not saying that. Giovannini is saying that. He said that in 2001, he came up with 15 different barriers to efficient clearing and settlement. 2001. In 2003, the European Central Bank said, you know what, you're right. We definitely need to do something about this fragmentation, because there is fragmentation here, there is over-intermediation, there is no surety of ownership. There are a lot of different problems. So what did the European Central Bank do? Well, they solved the problem. And yes, this is how they solved it. This is how, well, we'll let you read this for a second, because I've been told that if I explain jokes, they are less funny. And there you go. So the ECB created T2S. Finally, the world marveled at the beginning, at the inception of yet another platform. So basically, this was already in, I believe, 2015, if memory serves. So it took them from 2003 to 2015 to create yet another platform that had just the limited goal of making settlement more efficient. How did it go? Well, not very well. The problem with that is the fact that already in 2018, the ECB said that T2S was not going to be profitable for 14 years. In 2019, they had to raise the cost of delivery versus payment fees. They doubled it, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, the entirety of T2S was declared a failure. Not by me, but some folks at the European Post-Trade Forum that said, you remember Giovannini's barrier? They were 15. They were related to over-intermediation, fragmentation, all this kind of stuff. Well, they are no longer, finally, they are no longer 15. They're 17 now, which is great. So, no. Definitely, T2S was not really the resounding success that the European Central Bank thought it was going to be. So let's delve into why it wasn't. One of the problems is the fact that a very, very important component of this infrastructure, again, a platform, are CSDs, okay? Central Security Depositories. Central Security Depositories are very important in an infrastructure because they settle trades. Now, 60% of them, they are owned by exchanges. 60% is a very high number. Talking about Deutsche Börse, they have 3. Euronext, they have 4. What the hell are you going to do with 4 different CSD, man? I mean, tell me. And they are building a 5th one in the Netherlands, too, because they weren't really that many. Together with that, together with all the different kind of inefficiencies of these silos, of this vertical platform that basically just take a piece of the different kind of infrastructure and resist standardization, resist consolidation, and resist integration, because in the end, they have a mandate to profit. They have a mandate to preserve their business model. Now, I'm not a crypto nut job that says that profit is bad or whatever, everything on tokens. But certainly, when you are trying to create a consolidated platform or a consolidated infrastructure, then you really have a problem when you have conflicting incentives and conflicting interests among the participants in the infrastructure itself. This is why the platform-based approach for the EU has been a failure. In US, it's better. Why is it better? Because there is one CSD. So there is consolidation of liquidity. There are 2 different exchanges. In Europe, there are 24 CSD. And if Montis gets the license in Luxembourg, then they get 25. not only that, there are many other problems that have got to do with this excessive intermediation, one of which is KYC and AML, which cost annually 14.25 million per institution. And these costs are replicated over and over and over and over and over again for every different intermediary. Settlement failure is also another problem with that. There are 6 to 8% of equity settlement that fail in the EU alone. And by the way, getting back to T2S, then in 2022, ECB estimated basically $500 million in cost of development cost that T2S need to return to or to repay the ECB. So, but not everything is lost, because we now have the DLT regime, which have been downplayed in every single conversation that I had with every single institution since that thing was effectively first proposed and then accepted and became an executive regime. The DLTR, what is the DLTR? The DLTR is basically a regime in the European Union that allows exchanges to apply for an exemption. Among the different exemptions that they can apply for is the DLT TSS, is called. These allow them to sidestep the CSD or to sidestep platforms completely and use a DLT, a blockchain, if you will. Now that provides the most clear regulatory pathway toward going from a platform-based financial market infrastructure to a protocol-based financial market infrastructure. What is the difference among the two? A protocol does not have a mandate to accrue profit. A protocol is basically a set of different specifications that everybody can implement. There are implementations that are, approved, what have you, but anyone can be part of the infrastructure. With the DLTR regime, we see the rise of the protocol-based infrastructure. So this is great, right? We solve essentially the fragmentation, we solve all these different intermediation, we solve all these costs and everything, and yet nobody is applying. Except Dusk. We are on the trajectory, basically on the trajectory of getting our DLTR together with an MTF in the Netherlands called MPEX, which specializes in bonds, but also other kind of securities. Now, we are talking about the first MTF of its kind that, in fact, starts to launch, if you will, this new kind of paradigm that can sidestep all the different problems in the platform-based infrastructure. Now, the institution-grade part is where I'm going to talk right now, which has got to do with different kind of layers that need to be implemented, right? And these different kind of layers, I am borrowing them from the analysis of Giovannini, but they need the implementation or this particular infrastructure to have these characteristics. We're not only talking about, the T-Rex standard or EIP or some standard on Ethereum for securities. That pertains to assets. That pertains to one of these three different layers. It's not about an infrastructure. That is about basically front end. Here we are talking about back end and front end. What is the difference? The difference is that if you do not have the back end, then you create yet another platform, yet another intermediated actor that on the back end uses blockchain. This is much worse than the normal platform because you have, instead of a database, you have a DLT, which is much more inefficient than a database, right? So you need to have all of these to have actually free, open, costless infrastructure for clearance and settlement. So the very first one is the transfer layer. The transfer layer needs to have two different things. A DLT, because otherwise, or similar technology. And the DLT needs to have fast finality, so below 10 seconds. This disqualifies layer 2s on Ethereum, for instance. Why? Because layer 2s essentially do not settle their transaction. They take their transaction, batch them, and then they settle them on the layer 1 every so often. Sometimes half an hour, sometimes 1 hour, sometimes 2. What you want for fast finality is less than 10 seconds. So this needs to be included in the layer 1. You need to have cost efficiency. Cost efficiency means that at peak time, basically transaction costs the same. You need to have open extensibility. This is about smart contracts, because in the end, you want also to have a little bit of flexibility for what concerns new regulations and other opportunities that can be reapped. At the same time, there is also the security that is common to all the DLT. I'm not going to stay too much there. It's data integrity, no repudiation, timestamping. These are pretty common. Now we get to the interesting part. And the interesting part is compliance. Now this is where everybody has a broker or an administration platform or an intermediation that basically just takes a certain particular compliance workflow and implement it off-chain. Now, this, again, is another source of inefficiencies, another source of costs, another source of fees that we get back to the platform kind of paradigm. The second layer that a protocol-based financial market infrastructure that is institution-grade, that has institution-grade needs to have, are those two things. You need to have a transactional model that is privacy-preserving, because otherwise we are all already in breach with GDPR, and nobody is going to transact on a network which is completely open. You need to have selective disclosure, because in the end, you still want, you need to have auditing of this different kind of transaction. And then you need to have explicit acceptance. Remember Larry Fink? Larry Fink did the fund on Ethereum. After, I don't know how much time that the fund went up, then he started to receive coins associated to North Korean transaction from Tornado Cash, by the way. All sorts of different shit coins. Can I say shit coins here? Well, that. And all sorts of stuff. You need explicit acceptance. I cannot send you a security, I don't know, a bond, and then you are obligated to repay, right? It would work marvel for me, but probably not for you. You need explicit acceptance. These things need to be in the layer 1. Not brokered by whatever intermediator. They need to be part of the technology. They need to be part of the protocol. If you transact on the layer 1, you need to have these things. Together with that, you need digital identity protocol, because otherwise compliance doesn't make any sense, right? You have access list, sure, permission stuff, awesome. But you need basically, again, to have a digital identity protocol. What is the difference there? Well, a digital identity protocol is essentially just an asset, is another asset that is tokenized. It's not native. It cannot be native because the underlying is our persona, so to speak. But it is a tokenized asset too, which should be owned and should be custodied by the user. Digital identity is one of these things that cannot be custodied by somebody else. You cannot sign something on behalf of somebody else without him telling you to. Sure, you can say, well, but custodians do that. No, for digital identity protocols, for identity protocols in general, this is not possible by regulation. So you need to have digital identity protocols. Even better if the digital identity protocol is self-sovereign, so that you can reuse it because it is in the power of the user to actually share it. So you have eligibility that can also be revoked, by the way, in a centralized manner, but based on digital identity protocol. You know what is even better than that? zero-knowledge-based self-sovereign digital identity protocol. I know it's a mouthful, but again, it's privacy-preserving. At that particular point in time, you are already slashing enormous cost from the KYC. I'm not saying that you can pool KYC data altogether automatically. That's not where I am going with this. But certainly, you are going to include a lot of different efficiencies, and you are going to slash the cost of this. Remember the 14 million and change every year spent? Well, this goes away with the digital identity protocol. You need to have dynamic eligibility. You need to have access list, whatever. And then governance. This is where all the tokenization circus as a service basically come with. And they are administrative platform in order to govern the assets, in order to, to do all the different kind of corporate actions that are. This is nothing new. There are different out there. There is the TREX standard, for instance. But the important point is that if the governance and the admin is part of the protocol itself, again, you're bypassing costs. You're bypassing the administration fees that, for instance, Securitize or Token are asking you, which are actually exorbitant if you listen to what some very famous ETF provider told us in person. And exorbitant for an ETF provider, so sort of sounds quite costly. But all these different things, they need to be well integrated with the rest. All these things are part of a protocol-based financial market infrastructure. Dusk provides all these boxes, all these different layers. The transfer layer is implemented by Dusk, which is the layer 1. We also created Citadel as a zero-knowledge-based, self-sovereign digital identity protocol for compliance. And we have Zedger. Zedger is our standard, but again, it is included in the protocol itself, so you don't have to pay. There is no profit that we are making out of using Zedger, which has the same thing that governance provides, plus privacy, plus explicit acceptance of securities. It has been modeled on top of MiFID II life cycle and is specific for European-based assets. We will probably expand also to UK and to other jurisdictions later on, but first let us launch mainnet and get this out of the box. And well, this is a little bit of a sneak peek at Zedger. Hope you like it. We try to basically make it we try to make the user experience as good as possible. But the interesting thing is that this is protocol. Again, it's not a platform. Nobody's actually asking any intermediation for this. So, well, I am 3 minutes over the time, so I am not going to go any farther. Thank you very much.